there was a reporter that asked about these reports of this militarized state that Donald Trump wants to implement. See if you can tell from Pete Hegseth's answer if he denies those reports.
A memo circulating on social media details the establishment of a National Guard response force that's going to be trained in crowd control and civil unrest and deployed in all 50 states by April of 2026. Can you verify the authenticity of that memo, and do you have any more information on the operations?
I'm not going to answer particulars on something that may be in the planning process, but we definitely do have multiple layers of National Guard response forces, whether it's in each state, whether it's regionally, whether it's Title 10 active duty, whether it's Washington, D.C. We've got a lot of different ways that constitutionally and legally we can employ Title 10 and Title 32 forces, and we will do so when necessary.
That was the long version of the word yes. What we do have is a setup and a plan forward to, as the reporter asked, National Guard response force trained in crowd control and civil unrest and deployed in all 50 states. That's the plan. That's been the plan from the beginning. That's why they keep saying Portland is on fire. That's why they keep saying that Chicago's upside down. That's why they said Washington, D.C. has 1 million crimes a day. It's why they said Los Angeles is being overrun by all these violent criminals and the citizens actually want some help. That is until they start attacking the citizens, claiming that those citizens are getting in the way of what citizens want. So be prepared for the National Guard. Armed militarized troops in all 50 states to suppress the rights of all Americans as this militarized state is put into place. I just wonder, for the folks who said, "Oh, you're lying about the internment camps," which we have. "Oh, you're lying about the unlawful police in the streets," which we have. "Oh, you're lying about them killing folks in these internment camps," which we have. And now you're lying about the militarized state that's going to be unleashed on all 50 states. That is until Pete Hegseth confirmed it there by not saying no. When he said, "I'm not going to talk about it because we still got plans in place to install our military state because people are going to be fed up with this." It's all at the behest of their king, who really didn't like those protests from a week ago.
Like even that garbage deal they had this weekend, which was embarrassing to them, and the crowds were the crowds were not big. Those crowds were not big at all. But when you look at signs, and they're all made beautifully, the yellow signs, I saw the yellows, the blues, but they're all made professionally in a printing shop, looks like on Madison Avenue someplace. Some guy is paying for all that stuff. And we don't mind protest. Protest is a good thing. I protest. I'm always protesting, right? But when you see some of these people are going crazy. They're going crazy because they're getting paid. Because there's no reason for them to be going crazy. But you watch some of them, and they're professional agitators. And we are finding out who's paying them. Yeah, we have a lot of information about who they are. You're going to be very surprised when you find out.
I think you might be surprised when you find out who these professional agitators are, because he's going to make it up. He's going to be surprised when you find out, too, because it's going to come right out of his ass. So, again, 7 million people are paid professional agitators. Isn't that weird? If that was the case, all these 7 million paid professional agitators that were all in the streets over that weekend where he was so upset about, they might be stimulating this crappy economy that this guy is instituting. You know, there might be more jobs out there. People might have more money to spend. Man, who is this guy who's paying 7 million people to come out and say, "We don't want your ass around here anymore"? It really got under his skin.
Like I saw that ridiculous march the other day. I say, these people are not representative of our country. And not all of them, of course, but many of them are total lowlifes. These are lowlifes. These are people that are paid agitators, and they're not representative of our country.
They're lowlives. I mean, not all of them. I mean, well, so which ones are paid? When is somebody going to ask him for details? The biggest way to make this guy expose himself, not that he hasn't already exposed himself, but further, is to ask him for details, like in all earnest. Like ask him, "Oh, Mr. President, I hadn't heard about this. How many of them were paid and how much are they paid? How could you tell which ones are lowlifes and which ones are normal people?" I mean, who's the funder of these things? You're going to tell me soon? I look forward to it. And next time I see your face in front of a microphone, I'm going to ask you again, have you given me an update yet on who all these paid protesters were? So as they're implementing their militarized state, as he's talking about how all these people who didn't want this king, this monarchy that he thinks he's imposing on the country, every time they deny the reality, there's always someone that's within their inner circle, ass kisser, who absolutely confirms the opposite.
Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28. We had longer odds in 16 and longer odds in 24 than we got in 28. And President Trump will be the president of the United States, and the country needs him to be president of the United States. We have to finish what we started. And the way we finish it through Trump. Trump is a vehicle. I know this will drive you guys crazy, but he's a vehicle of divine providence. He's an instrument. He's very imperfect. He's not churchy, not particularly religious, but he's an instrument of divine will. And you can tell this of how he's pulled this off. We need him for at least one more term, right? And he'll get that in 28.
You're not driving me crazy. I'm trying to understand the coherence of the things you've just told me in the last few minutes. On the one hand, you've said the Constitution is fit for purpose. Secondly, you've said that President Trump needs another term, even though the 22nd Amendment makes pretty clear that he cannot have another term.
Why does it make that clear?
Because he's on his second term already.
At some point in time, we will make sure we go through Zanny and define all those terms.
Okay? But even if you find a way to undermine you will be undermining the spirit of that amendment, even if you find some way around it. And to those
Can the American people, if the American people, with the mechanisms we have, put Trump back in office, are the American people tearing up the Constitution? Would that be tearing up?
Well,
would the American people be going against the spirit of the Constitution, ma'am?
I think yes, actually, because I think what you will end up with is a populist justification for a quasi-dictatorship.
That's not true at all. Trump
That's what it sounds like.
It's not. Trump is a dictatorship. Did you just see the compromises he had to make on the big, beautiful bill? You see the compromises he has to do on everything, on accommodating Zelensky, on what President Trump. President Trump is nothing but a series of negotiations to kind of keep this thing rolling forward, where he's having trade-offs all the time.
Steve, you've just spent the last 20 minutes telling me we have to smash the other side. There's no room for debate. There's no room for compromise. We must smash them. And now you're telling me this is a negotiation. I mean, that's
no.
I guess that's why
on his
seems to me some
his
kind of tension
First
there.
off, the only way President Trump wins in 2028 and continues to stay in office is by the will of the American people. Okay? And the will of the American people is what the Constitution embodies. And so I think we're going to be in good hands there. We need to finish what we started. And President Trump is the instrument, a providential instrument to finish this job.
If you ask enough questions, they'll tell you everything, because he has this odd confidence in his lies, in his circular logic that keeps coming back to, well, it's this divine will that Donald Trump is God. But they'll tell you that you're overreacting when you say they're in a cult, but they'll keep saying that Donald Trump has been ordained by God to then go assault people, take over the United States, and take away everyone's rights. He's an instrument of divine will. And by the way, he said later, we'll go ahead and redefine the Constitution by the American people, just making shit up. This guy just talks. All that means is they're going to ignore that later. He goes, we'll get back to destroying that aspect of the Constitution a little bit later. But the American people are going to put him in power. Or the American people kicked his ass out in 2020, but he said that didn't happen to this day. I think all of the evidence shows that this guy has no recourse, has no kind of no respect for the American people. He just says things. So please, let's get this crusty scab face sumbitch off of TV. They're full and utter responsibility. The reason for being here is to support and push forward the king's thoughts. Chris Murphy was posted this. And he was speaking to this nominee for ambassador to South Africa. Think about that.
Do you support having a refugee admissions policy in this country that only admits white refugees?
Senator, I don't make that policy.
Well, but it's really important. But I think this is if I were to ask this question of virtually any nominee to be an ambassador prior to this panel, that would be an easy layup answer. No, of course, we don't support having a refugee policy where we only admit white people. So why can't you give me your personal view on that?
Because, Senator, I am here to serve America and to do what the president is asking me to do. I'll be following the executive order of February.
Would you support reinstituting laws in this country to only allow white people to vote?
Senator, I'm going to serve as ambassador to South Africa, and I'm going to focus on that.
You will not share your personal views on whether it is right or wrong to reinstitute discriminatory policies in this country to prevent black people from voting?
Senator, my personal views are irrelevant. I am serving here to do what the president is asking me to do in South Africa.
Well, that's just simply not true. The whole reason that you're appearing before this committee is because your personal views, your history is absolutely relevant to your fitness to serve. We wouldn't have this process if your personal views were not relevant. That is pretty stunning that you will not share your views not only on whether we should have a refugee admissions process that is race-based, but you won't share your personal views on whether we should reimpose discriminatory treatment against black Americans. That is absolutely relevant to your qualifications to serve, and your refusal to answer it, I hope, is something that every member of this committee will think about.
Hey, Chris, the rest of this committee won't think about that. It's why the rest of this committee also, I don't know if it's this particular committee, but others confirmed people like Pete Hegseth, confirmed people like Kash Patel, confirmed people like Pam Bondi, because they all said similar things. Actually, he's being more honest than they were, but they're doing it. He says, I'm here to serve America and do what the president is asking me to do. Well, the president is going to ask you to do more discriminatory race-based policies because the president is a racist. So in doing that, as he just admitted, I'll do whatever he wants. My personal views are irrelevant. It harkens back to that thing that I just played the other day where RFK Jr. back in 2016 said, all we need is these fleshy dominoes.
You're right about Trump. Quote, the way that you build a truly vicious nationalist movement is to wed a relatively small core of belligerent idiots to a much larger group of opportunists and spineless fellow travelers whose primary function is to turn a blind eye to things. We may not have that many outright Nazis in America, but we have plenty of cowards and bootlickers, and once those fleshy dominoes start tumbling into the Trump camp, the game is up.
And they fall right into place, kind of like what RFK Jr. is also now doing. Their personal views are irrelevant. They serve the king. So please don't have any more discussions with them about whether or not this guy thinks he's a king. The people that serve him, as that trash human being just said, have no views. They're there to serve him.